Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not to Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Pennyworth as well as the latest episode of Preacher. Like always, I'm going to talk about something that you want to listen to. You can always look in the description down below. I glued the time. I'm going to start talking about each of the respective shows. So, for example, if you don't want to hear what I said about this week's episode of Pennyworth, you can skip to what I said about this week's episode of Preacher. But the first thing I'm going to talk about is this week's episode of Pennyworth. A lot of interesting things were done in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we're dealing with the ramifications of what Alfred did. I'm actually kind of surprised things didn't get worse. I'm surprised they didn't they threw him kind of in a deep dark hole, but it's not as bad as I thought it would have been. And I guess they kind of had to keep everything. Well, they're treating him just like any regular criminal. It's not just a situation of obviously they're throwing a book at him harder just because, because it's almost like, well, it doesn't matter if he's the one that killed your fiance, whatever, murder is murder. Like, that side of things just didn't come up about, why he did what he did. Because everyone knows why he did what he did, but this is a very political situation, so they're not getting all caught up in the details in that regard. What I thought was interesting, though, it's who's the woman you're with? But Alfred won't give up, Sykes, because it's she had his back. The fact his bed was there. In fact, she saved his life, and it's I owe her. It wouldn't be fair for me to give up someone who, saved my life. So fair play, right? Plus, also at the same time, she was there to help him get revenge for Esme. So I think that adds an extra element of she had my back during the whole thing. So how can I turn my back on her? So he gets thrown into prison, and I love him walking in there and being like, "Hi, my name is Alfred Pennyworth. Who's in charge here?" I'm like, are you about to do the typical jail thing of finding the biggest, toughest person and taking him down? And lo and behold, when we see Sandra pop up later, it's oh, in fact, he did that. Because they're like, oh yeah, who's this lady? And she's like, I'm here for Alfred Pennyworth. And then immediately everyone was like, oh, wow. Everyone that was gathering around her slowly walked away. I was like, oh, Alfred's in charge here, isn't it? And the guy's like, Mr. Pennyworth, you have a visitor. I'm like, dude, what did you do to kind of set people straight to be like, yo, I kind of run things in here? That was just so interesting. And we never get to find out how he did that. But it's interesting. Him having that talk with Sandra. Sandra's like, yeah, the boys are mentioning, Baza and Dayboy are mentioning this particular thing, this particular war. Was it Rangru or something like that? And he is like, no, tell them they're fucking idiots, in particular they're fucking children, that not to do this, that's stupid. Because the fact of the matter, she's like, oh, Rangru means escape, right? It's like, yes, but we don't want to do it like that because that particular, it's an operation or something that they were a part of or whatever, or, whatever the case may be. It was something that was very bloody, and he's like, if I need to find a way out of here, it's going to be my way. I'm going to think of something, just tell them to back down. It's an order. And I did like that heart to heart with Sandra he had, where it was like, hey, I know I haven't treated you right, but the fact of the matter is you do deserve better. The fact of the matter is you don't want to be mixed up with a guy like me. You are such a good person. You're so beautiful. You could get a lord if you wanted to. But she's like, I don't want a lord, basically saying I want to be with you. But for him, it's you'll forget about me and I'll forget about you. So just basically move on with your life. So she took that to heart, went back to Baz and Dayboy and says yo, Alfred said no. So there's that whole situation. All at the same time, there's also obviously everything with the prime minister and the queen. You could tell the prime minister didn't want to do this, but the queen was basically telling him hey, basically open up everything. Even these criminals, the No Name League or the Raven Society, give them an opportunity. When it comes to the elections and stuff like that, they have an opportunity to speak freely without suffering judicial reprimand, essentially. So you can tell he was reluctant to be, but he was don't give in to these ruffians, don't give in to the darkness, believe in this traditions, the traditional parties that have existed before now, basically saying me and other people of my ilk. So yeah. So now that's a whole thing, which Thomas and Martha have a very interesting conversation, because Martha looks at this very positively because she wholeheartedly believes in the No Name League. The fact of the matter is saying oh, everything's going to work, because she believes in what they believe, and it's they believe in a better London, so for her, it's it's all good. It's a better society, essentially, which you have Thomas. You can make the being cynical, pessimistic, but maybe almost, because Martha is very idealistic, as he says, and, he's, like I said, cynical, but maybe you can make the argument being a realist is the whole situation, because he is with the CIA, because she's like, the CIA wouldn't, put someone in power that wasn't good for the country. And he's like, on the contrary, they would. They don't care as long as it benefits American interests. They'd put a chimpanzee in charge if they had to, because they're not in this to like, oh, like, you know, because, you know, that's the CIA's thing. Like, they kind of come in, they disrupt countries and stuff like that because it's about more benefiting, like, they kind of keep the world spinning in a certain regard because they want the world to kind of spin in a direction that's more beneficial to them. It's something I kind of talked about before. So it's that thing of kind of like, yeah, the more pessimistic, cynical approach, but it's also the more realistic approach where it's like, because someone like Martha is more idealistic, that's why he doesn't want her to be connected to this no-name league, because he knows that the CIA's pulling the strings behind this, that basically everything is not going to be what you think it is. She even looks at Undine as someone like, oh, she's an honorable, respectable person, an honest person, which is funny considering the fact is, it's like, oh, let's not also forget she's also the one that had her husband killed. Granted, no one has yet put those together. I don't even think Alfred's 100% put that together. But even like people have kind of been like, there is something interesting about that. Like, but the pieces aren't really there. So it's like, you know, if that came out, that'd probably like destroy a lot of her credibility in certain people's eyes. But it is that thing of like, for, because to prove his point, Thomas is like, we back the No-Name League, but we also, the CIA also back the prime minister as well. So we kind of, you know, in that regard, and if we could, we would back the Raven Society, but they wouldn't have us. So it's like, it's the thing that's showing that the CIA is playing all angles in this situation. It's like, it's like a chess game, and it's like, we're trying to make the best moves that will benefit us winning. Kind of don't care about, you know, what ends up happening over here. It's like, that's their issue, but as long as it benefits us, who cares who's in charge? So that's kind of interesting. But Martha, even with it all said and done, like I said, still wants to be kind of in the rumble, which Thomas is, you know, showing that he does care about it. And it's like, as a friend, I would tell you to walk away from this. I know you won't listen to me about walking away from the No-Name League, but at the very least, think about it. But obviously, she proves herself to be a situation where she's like, nah, regardless of all that, I'm still going to be a part of this, because she worms her way. I say it's worm, but let's put a little more class to it. She finesses her way into this whole situation because Thomas is sent on a mission by Undine and John Ripper, which the fact is that's just so out there in the open. Does that mean that everyone already knew about John Ripper being part of this? Or is it just kind of thing of Undine's probably like, hey, he's my advisor in this whole situation. Probably doesn't let people know about the whole thing. At the same time, it's probably also because she's a leader. Her business is her business. That's none of your damn business type of thing. So we'll see in the long run with that whole situation. But, you know, Martha, you know, she kind of comes in and she kind of impresses him. And it's like, you know what? I like you. We met before. I liked you then. I like you now. You know what? The fact is, go to this meeting with Thomas, and Thomas is like, I don't think that's a good idea. And she's like, oh, come on. The fact of the matter is, like, another lady, a woman at the table might make it, you know, a little more, everyone's a little bit more agreeable between the Raven Society and the No-Name League. So, but like I said, Martha handled things her own way and still managed to kind of be a part of all this because, like I said, she does believe in this. Like, even if you had, like, even she said, even though Thomas may have ulterior motives, that being the CIA, the fact of the matter is you're still siding with the No-Name League, and so that means I'm siding with you too, you know? So that was just kind of an interesting thing in that regard. Obviously, we have the whole Raven Society thing of, like, Harwood returning home to his wife, Clarissa. Part of me felt like it was kind of hinting that, well, the dude who ends up being like, who's like a butler or whatever, the dude who ends up being a mole, I thought something was happening between him and Clarissa. Side note, now that I'm sitting here thinking about it, it must mean that Clarissa might be the mole, or maybe her and that dude, maybe that dude is kind of the inside man. Maybe he's the middleman for her, for Clarissa and Aziz. Now, I just thought about that now. But the fact is, like, they kind of gave a look to each other. I was like, at first I chalked it up as like, oh, they must be lovers or something. Because it's like, oh, she thought her husband was there. But you even see, like, Peg and Bet kind of catch up on it a little bit. They look at that look between them, but nothing come about it. So I was like, but now I'm sitting here thinking about it, not less Clarissa, which would be interesting if she was the traitor. That might be how they caught Harwood in the first place, because she might have ratted out her husband. But now it's like, oh, he's back. If he ever found out I'm the one that told on him, I'd be kind of screwed. So because she didn't seem that interested in him, because he's kissing her on her neck and everything, and she's just almost like, she's just kind of going the motions, and, you know, because she has to pretend like she's happy for him to be back, and it's like, oh, who's these strange women you brought with you? It's like, oh yeah, these, you know, our friends, you know, a friend of mine is a friend of theirs, you know, type of situation. So it's just, and it's interesting in that regard. So the whole plan is to, and I think it's kind of actually a smart plan, where it's like, let's make good terms between the No-Name League and the Raven Society, because this way because the whole point, and it's even something Thomas had said, was the fact is that the Prime Minister and the Queen in particular are hoping that giving this free reign, that basically the No Name League and the Raven Society will once again destroy each other, given this opportunity that they kind of tear at each other. But they wanted to take this opportunity. In particular, Harwood was like, we can come together, create an alliance. We get some of the seats, they get some of the seats. We come to some kind of negotiation. So rather than tearing at each other, we come together kind of as allied forces and kind of like, we benefit from the situation, and like the Queen and the Prime Minister don't really as much, which that kind of pisses the Prime Minister off the moment he finds out about it, because this is going to sway things more in their favor, right? Because he's hoping that they kind of end up destroying each other, leaving the more traditional parties as, you know, the ones to kind of handle things. Like I said, it's all interesting, the whole espionage / like political element to this whole thing. I wasn't expecting that to be what Pennyworth was about, but I really like that being an angle to it, especially like understanding like what everyone wants, but at the same time it's like there's so much duplicity upon it. I mean, that's kind of the espionage angle to it, but I like that a lot. So regardless, I'm going on a little bit of a tangent, but the whole point was to kind of have this meeting. At the same time, Aziz shows up and he offers Alfred a job. It's like, Alfred, you can get out of here, but you got to kill one person, Harwood. And it's like, okay. So there's also like the Pretender and, you know, the Duke and the Duchess that were brought in to potentially take the throne from the Queen if she doesn't go the way they want her to. So it's a whole thing of like, okay, so why not just have them whacked if that's the issue? Well, why just Harwood? Because if you kill Harwood, you're just going to make him a martyr and just make the Raven Society look even more bolstered, especially because even later on, Baza and Dayboy are like, oh yeah, so we're going to kill literally the most popular person right now because there's so much hype behind, you know, Harwood, that like literally a majority of people, even people in the militaries, even what the Prime Minister was like, even like some of the army people are behind him. They have more of his support than the Queen has of their support, you know? So it's like going after someone like that at their peak of their popularity. Yeah, that's going to be an issue all in its own. But like in this particular case, it's a thing of like, they need Harwood taken out now. Not even if it makes him a martyr, like at least this way it kind of fizzles out, because he's already got the whole getting, you know, the Duke and the Duchess, putting them potentially on the throne and everything. So it's that whole thing of like, he needs to be taken out now. So Alfred takes the job because it, you know, gets him back, you know, out of jail for now, which he meets up with his mom and his dad, and they're both happy. Which I should note, I just found out because I circled back to 10 Star in between episodes and whatnot, and I didn't realize it because I kept looking at the actor who plays Frank in the TV. I was like, why does he look so familiar? Looked it up and it was like, oh yes, it's the same actor who plays Alfred's dad in this show. I'm like, I didn't realize that until I looked at his IMDb and I saw Pennyworth. I was like, what? Alfred's dad, Arthur. I was like, that's so interesting. So if you've seen 10 Star, like, you know, I just didn't recognize it because obviously he looks a little different. It's kind of the point. He's more kind of bit of a ruffian in 10 Star. In this, he's obviously a little more distinguished. You know, he's a butler and everything, so obviously his hair slicked back, you know, and everything, so he's a lot more like put together as, you know, Arthur than he is as Frank. But regardless, once again, a little bit of a tangent, but sadly, you know, obviously, like, Alfred's mom's like, oh, you boys aren't in any trouble. And he's like, no, because she's like, I just got my baby boy back. I don't want to mess up anything. But then it's like, she knows Alfred's going to go do something dangerous. And it's like, no, you should know your dad's sick. He has cancer. I figured as much. Because there was something his mom kept wanting to bring up, but the dad didn't want to. Because Arthur was like, no. Don't trouble the boy. Like, this is mine, burden to bear. And I don't want anyone to know, so no one's going to know. So there's that whole situation. But ultimately, it turns into the thing of, like, she has to tell him. It's like, if you're going to go off and do something dangerous, even if it's government work, the fact of the matter is you should know this. So, I can't have you going off and dying on me because I love you so much. And your dad, he's terminal. There's no, like, curing this. He has 2 years at best. And it's like, if something happens to him and I lose him, I can't be alone. Like, I need you here, too. So, obviously, Alfred is trying to come back to his parents, and his mom's trying to pretend like everything's okay, but you can tell even Alfred's having a hard time kind of keeping up the front. But he tells his dad, like, I love you, Dad, as he leaves. But then she kind of puts on the smile, like, even though she's worried and whatnot. So they go through the plan. It's like, I was wondering whether or not he was going to meet Bet and whatnot, because it's like, we know that she went to the dealings with Peg, but she decided to go back. I was like, oh man, that would suck if you end up killing, like, somehow circumstances you kill Peg and Harwood, and then you see that Bet's there. But what really drew his attention was like, oh, the other two pit, because the whole point is to make it so that Harwood dies and kill the two representatives from the No Name League, to make it look like, oh, it was, the other side and kind of reignite a civil war between them and whatnot. But that all changed for Alfred the moment it's like, wait, it's Thomas Wayne and Martha Kane. Obviously, I think, for him, it's obviously like Martha means something to him because he spent time with Martha, so it's when he knows. But the same thing for Thomas. It's like, it's different when you're fighting and have that. Yes, you're doing this for your country, because even Dave Boy was like, hey, these are the Queen's bullets. It's like, yeah, but it's still murder nonetheless. And it's not like these, you can't even do the thing of like, okay, this is someone I don't know. Why he was probably so able to pull the trigger on Undine's husband, because it's like, well, it's not someone I know. In this particular case, these are two people you've known, you've met on multiple occasions, gotten to know, so it's like, it makes it a different thing. But for him, he can't pull the trigger on this. I mean, to be fair, even Aziz didn't know, but that changes everything for Alfred. Like, I can't pull the trigger. So he ends up shooting around them, also giving them cover fire, letting everyone escape because he takes out the cops' cars. And it's crazy thing is, they'll never know. Bet will never know. Harwood would never know. Peg will never know. Neither will Martha and Thomas ever know that it was Alfred looking out for them like that. So that's interesting. Even giving them the covering fire needed to get away when the cops are closing in. Like, no one's going to realize that was them. And so it turns into the whole circumstances of like, well, for one, like Harwood figures, hey, we've got a mole in our midst. So because of that, it's like, we have to take more drastic measures. Thomas and Martha are like, well, the fact of the matter is that was actually exciting because Martha actually kind of enjoyed all of that. It's like, hey, we nearly died, but we didn't, in which they're kind of laughing about, which I guess, hey, they're slow. I mean, obviously we've seen them slowly get closer and closer, especially because they were playing backgammon together earlier. And it's like, oh, really? I owe you $250? He's like, man, that's crazy. But I think this is, I guess, near-death experiences under, it's usually that type of thing where it's like relationships get really tested legitimately on the battlefield. And I mean that literally, that, things kind of get a little heightened and stuff like that. So what might have taken a little longer because of these circumstances might end up pushing them closer together faster. So that's a whole thing in itself. So I think that's interesting. But Harwood's plan of expediting things kicks things right along because of this, he sends Bet and Peg to basically kidnap the Queen. I guess it's like, we're going to grab her, then we're going to have a sit down, and we're not going to like beat around the bush. We're going to go straight up. It's like, it is what it is. Like, we, the government, the Queen in particular, the Prime Minister have shown, oh, they want Harwood dead. So it's like, we might as well take this chance now, because if we don't, they're going to be gunning for us anyway. And it's like, the fact is, this whole thing was a bad idea, bringing in, the Duke and the Duchess. But whatever, the fact of the matter is, it's already here. It's already done. Obviously, they're also going to be doing the whole pulling out the traitor, which once again, I'm pushing towards Clarissa, but we'll see whether that ends up being the case or not. But it is interesting of like, Bet and Peg kidnapping the Queen. I love that. It's like, put the gun down. Put down the fucking gun. I'm like, okay. So that's interesting. So that's expediting along in that regard. I'd almost thought it would be crazy. I was like, well, I mean, this is comic book history, so we could make it so that the Queen technically died, I guess. But I doubt, they're going to like mess with history too much. Obviously, they're going to put their little DC spin to it and espionage spin to it and everything. But so there's that side of things. There's a thing that because Alfred didn't pull the trigger, because he didn't kill someone like he was supposed to, now the cops are going to want to put him back in Newgate, which he's like, I can't do that. Which, to be fair, you kind of ran Newgate for a little bit. You were in there, but I guess it's still kind of like, well, you're in there for a limited amount of time. You basically spend the rest of your life down there because they'd make sure you never got out. So that's a different circumstances, I think. So now him, Bazza, and Dave Boy, because all three were involved in this situation, like all three of them have to go on a run, which, I'm sure for Bazza and Dave Boy, it's kind of like, hey, we decided we're by your side during all this. Plus, we don't know if they have much of a life outside of all of this too. Let's also not forget, because Alfred hooked up with Sandra too, so that's a whole complicated thing. You kind of basically like, because he'd even told her, like, the fact of the matter is, you'll forget me, I'll forget you, and you have to move on. So it seemed like those circumstances might come truer than she would him or her would have really expected, because now he has to go on a run, has to say goodbye to his mom and his dad. Which, once again, is something I brought up last episode. His dad has connections to the Raven Society. I mean, he's not necessarily a part of it, but he believes in them. So he might reach out to Harwood, which Harwood would be like, wait, this is Pennyworth we're talking about, which he had an interest in Pennyworth. Maybe he'd be a little reluctant because it's like, oh, Pennyworth didn't help us last time. He busted my nose. But then, we might, and it's something I brought up before, Bet might be the sliding vote to be like, yo, that Pennyworth guy, he's all right. He loved Esme. He got revenge for her. That's what this is all about. It was a whole political thing. Maybe not. I don't know. I think that'd be kind of an interest. I think if anything could happen, those circumstances could be like that, especially because, Arthur would want his son to be on the run and everything. So I don't know. It'd be interesting to see like that be the thing. So, I mean, to be fair, he's got allies, like I said, on both sides. The No Name League, and I mean, to be fair, he did pull the trigger on Undine's husband, even though she kind of hired him for that. So there's that whole complicated thing, which I'm wondering will Martha and Thomas ever find out that was Alfred. But then there's like the Raven Society. Like everyone's kind of, definitely the Raven Society's got an interest in Alfred, so I'm curious to see how that all plays. I mean, next week's episode is the season finale, and I'm so curious to see how this whole situation ends up playing out. Because his mom had even thrown out there, oh, he'll have to run away to America. It's like, no, nothing like that, Mom. Which I'm like, I doubt this is the moment that's going to push you to eventually move to Gotham. Like, there's still, I feel like, so much story to tell in that regard. But for him, he's like, at most, at best, I'll go to Wales, So we'll ultimately see how this whole situation plays out. I'm very interested to see what the season finale has in store for us. And now moving on to this week's episode of Preacher, a great episode. So much stuff went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Obviously, the trio is reunited, and I love that thing of like, you have Cassidy being like, so should we tell him about what happened between us? It's like, no, I get it. I understand. After everything he's been through, mom's the word. And the moment he comes out, he's like, oh, look, it's Captain Morgan. And immediately Tulip is like, we slept together. I was like, ooh, I didn't expect you to say that. To be fair, I was like, oh, we're literally in the same situation in season 1 again. Except this time she straight up tells him. And it's like, you weren't here. So if you want to use the word on us and turn it into toads, that's fine. He's like, no. He's like, Jesse's like, thank you for telling me. I'm not mad. I love you both. The fact of the matter is, I'm glad you told me. You're right. I was going. And he's like, and turn you into what? She's like, toads. And it's like, okay. I love that you're thinking that the word has that type of power. But nevertheless, it's like, even I was like, oh, this is a little weird. Jesse's taking this too damn well. And then, do have that line later on where Cassidy's like, so are we good? Because I love it. Tulip's like, so I know it's a little awkward and soon to be saying this, but I think everything's going to be good going forward. And she walks out and, he's like, so we're good? And Jesse's like, no, she was 100% right. I was going. Now I'm back. And I'm like, this is still kind of that weird, awkward situation. I mean, at least they're not going to blows like they were before. So it's still that thing of like Cassidy's in love with Tulip, but obviously like she's the one that Jesse's always been like, they kind of been in love. They've known each other since they were kids and he's loved her for a very long time. They have so much history and the connection. It's them to the end of the world, type of thing. So I don't know. I'm like, oh, I don't know. To be fair, that just feeds into Cassidy's story in this episode. But I do love that, like, they're there when they go to Masada, they kick some ass. I do like when Harris, like, talking about, like, oh, yeah, like, who's all going to get punished? The feminists, the desperate, the desperados. No, the degenerates is what he said. And, it showed Cassidy and then Desperados and it showed Jesse. I just love that. And then you have, like I said, them kicking some serious ass. I just love that they showcased that and just like everyone getting their moments to shine in the little fights. It's interesting, like, obviously, this is showcasing on TV and stuff like that. That detective that Hoover 2 worked for, he sees Hare on TV. And I guess because of his own, Hoover 2's reports and stuff like that, he knew who exactly Star was. Not unless they've had some past that we just don't know about. But I'm assuming it's just because it's like, oh, here's Star. Here's that whole apocalypse thing my undercover cop was wondering me about, warning me about, So I think that's probably as far as that, like, connection goes. And it is so crazy to me to see that it is being showcased on television. I mean, this is like a big spectacle. After Humperdoo comes out, Messiah does his thing. And then afterwards, the apocalypse will happen. It's so interesting, too, because it's weird to see Hare's Star with, like, hair. And as he says, look handsome. And I'm like, it's weird that you're like that. I'm so used to seeing you one way for so long. So now seeing you this other way, it's just kind of weird. Like, I feel so bad because, like, Pip Torrance, the actor who plays him, I'm probably always going to look at him as Hare's Star. It's probably going to be one of those roles where it's like, this is my first time ever seeing you in something. So I'm always going to associate with you as this. So when I see you as something different, it's always going to be a little weird. So not having the traditional Hare Star look that he's had majority of the show it's weird seeing him like this now. Regardless, there's that whole situation. I'm not even going to talk about that little storyline they've got set up with Eugene. I'm like, what the hell is that going to be? Because it's like, oh, they're releasing him from prison because he was like, yeah, for some weird reason they thought I ate Jesse, but they couldn't find him in my poop. So there's this. It's not even the fact that Jesse's actually alive, because I think Eugene's probably under the impression that he's still, actually dead. Or if not, better off dead, because the cowboy has his hands on him, which obviously it's weird when you actually think about that, because that kind of came full circle in a certain regard. We'll get to that later on, but nevertheless, that was kind of an interesting situation. But he's like, so what was God's plan for me now? It's like, oh, what was it? Like, maybe your comic relief, your cautionary tale, maybe this and that, like that priest was saying. And then he's like, or maybe there is no plan for someone like you. And Eugene's not really listening. He's like, I know, rock star. I'm like, holy shit. So he gets free. He's on the street. He starts thinking about, the rock star life and the drugs, the girls, the live shows. And then he's like, he gets ready to sing, and then immediately gets run over by a taxi. And it's like, wait, what? What is that? And then we see that his leg twitches. So it's like, is he actually still alive? Does God actually have no plan for him? Is Eugene going to be the Hail Mary in this situation, because God planned for everything? He saw everything, but because he thought Eugene was so insignificant that he ended up, it's like, oh, you played your roles in certain regards. Maybe Eugene has always been his blind eye. Maybe it'll be something messed up where he's like, oh, I never paid you any attention because the last thing I want to do is stare at that ugly mug of yours. And he ends up being that one thing that God never saw. Say God has the Byakugan from Naruto. It technically has a 360 degree vision, can see full circle, except it does have a 1 degree blind spot as it gets revealed. So I'm wondering, is Eugene supposed to be his 1 degree of blindness? Oh, we'll see. But it's just so interesting because I'm like, is he dead? Is he actually going to go to hell? Is he going to actually go to heaven? And then that shifts every day. But like I said, his leg twitched, so I don't know if that was kind of like a last minute body spasm, or whether that's just supposed to be he's actually still alive. And I don't know what to make. I have no idea what they're going to do with Eugene's story in this regard. So there's that to think about. Then you have oh dude, God talking to Humperdew after Humperdew was kind of being heralded by all these people. They're reaching for him. It's like, Messiah, Messiah. And one dude tries to come up and is like, oh, bless me, Messiah. And then you have Featherstone immediately deal with that by kicking the dude in the stomach and kicking him away. And it's like, no, preparations for Humperdew and everything. Jesus and him officially meet. They hug. He gets covered in cupcakes on his boobs, and it's like everyone's laughing at him. It's like, you're laughing at Jesus, but that's so messed up. And then it's like this lady's like, oh, can I get, holds up her phone, and he's like, oh, sure. And Jesus gets ready to pose with Humperdew, but she's like, no. He's like, oh, no, sure, of course. And it's just kind of like, oh, poor Jesus. And then later on, he's trying to talk to his dad. He's like, hey, Dad. He's like, Jesus? He's like, yeah, it's like, I want to wish you good luck, both of you and everything. He's like, yeah, sure, yeah, no problem. He's like, is that it? And he's like, yeah. And then Hitler's like, come on, you can do it. And it's like, okay. And he's like, wait. And then he break dances in front of his dad. And I love Featherstone's looking like, oh my God, you look so pathetic right now. And he does it, and God's like, good. And slides the door closed and kind of goes back to looking after Humperdew. And it's like, my God, I feel so bad for him. It's literally your own father. God doesn't believe in you. The only person who believes in you is Hitler, which is interesting. And now it's like, Jesus is being so depressed about it. And it's like, well, you can always turn to murder. What Jesus was like, I don't kill. And Hitler's like, I know. But I do. And, Jesus starts thinking about it. And so he goes off later on. Hitler's about to do it. But Jesus stops and it's like, whoa. Why are you doing this? And I thought so as much. Hitler's explanation is kind of what I thought it was. It's like, because he knew he can, if Jesus is his opponent, I can work my way around you. You're not that divine. You're not that special. But Humperdew, God's literally put so much time into him. He is this Messiah. He is this, I forgot what the word that he used, but he's a powerful opponent that what he represents is like this 100% righteousness, whereas Jesus, even though Jesus is supposed to be Jesus, it's like, but the fact of the matter is, like, Hitler knew he would win against Jesus. It's what that's all about. So even in the end, Hitler was never 100% in your corner. Like I figured as much. It was all for the purpose of, because Hitler had to have his own ulterior motives. He's literally always had his own ulterior motives. So it's like, oh, it's because I knew I couldn't win against you when it comes to negotiations. Humperdinck would be a whole other story. So, yeah. But Jesus is trying to stop him. And now we're in this position where Hitler and Jesus are fighting about this whole situation. It's like situations you never thought you would have to utter those words or even expect to see. It's crazy. So, on top of all that, you have God separating everyone. First, he goes after Cassidy because he's promising Cassidy everything he ever wanted. Like, the fact is, you can, basically rewrite his history so it's like his friend Billy didn't die. That him and Billy actually come back home. Because he's no longer a vampire because of all those events. And it's like, oh, you can also get the woman that do you think she would ever love you without a little divine intervention? It's like, if I had never killed Jesse, do you think she would have ever chosen you over him? It's never been that case. As long as he's been around, you've never been together again. Because the last time you were together like that was when there were complications between Jesse and Tulip. So you can make the argument there was divine intervention even back then, potentially. So it's that whole situation. So, obviously at first Cassidy's like, no, because the fact of the matter is you do a lot of terrible things. Like, the fact of the matter is you make it so that dogs die when they eat chocolate and all this and that. And it's like, the fact is you're going to wipe out so many people and, that you're kind of, he's kind of a dick, So, but at the same time, it's like, don't you miss home and stuff like that? Because for him, it is the whole thing of surviving. Because Cassidy has never loved what he is because he loses people, because he even talked, because they had talked about that with Tulip. It's like, the fact of the matter is, yeah, I'll be sad about losing you and Jesse, but like, I'll find a new you and Jesse. You come and go in my life because I always keep going on. But, it's hard to do that now. It's even harder now because he's found Tulip, because of all of this. He doesn't, he was already kind of tired of the whole vampirism thing. He never embraced it like everyone else did. He really hated that aspect because it was just, as we can tell, like a reminder of never being able to go back home for too much shame, losing his best bud, so it was all a constant reminder of that. So, but Cassidy kept saying no. He's like, I get it. You think I'm weak, don't you? You think I won't come through in the clutch in the end. But he's like, no, I think you're still that boy. You're that scared boy who just wants to go home. And I was like, oh, that's a powerful line. Then there's the moment between Jesse and Tulip. Because obviously Jesse was like talking about the fact is, in that moment when God was ripping into his flesh with his teeth, I could have used Genesis, but I didn't. I couldn't bring myself to do it. And he's like, I don't know why. Which, side note, since we're talking about Genesis, let me circle back to the fact is, I was like, what? They didn't make a big point of like, because Angel Dude and Demon Lady were like, yeah, take care of our child. I'm like, you're literally throwing that in there like it's not, you're not making a bigger deal of that. I figured as much because I'm like, the one angel and demon couple we come across, and I was like, there's no way, that's not Genesis' parents. Like, come on. And it's like, but they never made a bigger deal out of it. Maybe they did, and I just didn't catch the context of it, but it's like, they didn't make a big point of like, oh, these are Genesis' parents until just now. Not unless I missed something, which I'm pretty sure I didn't. Like, that's just nuts. That was just so casually dropped, like, hey, take care of our child. Which I love that even when they were reunited, helping all three of them sneak into Masada, they were still doing the whole, because they have a very they have a love-hate relationship. Probably like the most timeless example of a love-hate relationship. But it seems like they still love their child and everything, so that's cool. But nevertheless, circling back to it, there was that thing of like Tulip being like, yeah, I read your letter. He's like, well, what'd you think? And she's like, what's perpetuity mean? And he's like, forever. And she's like, huh. And she's like, oh yeah, I knew that. I just checking to see if you knew that, which I thought that was so adorable because it's like, it makes you wonder, it's at the one word she's been thinking the entire time, like, what does that mean? What's that mean? And I think she was too embarrassed to ask anybody what it actually meant. It makes you wonder how much of that did she kind of get hung up on when she was reading the letter. I don't know, or did she go, I don't know what that word means, I'm gonna skip over it. No, like, it's just, I think that's such an adorable thing for that to come up now. It's like, what's that word mean? Oh, okay. Oh, no, I knew it. What are you, an idiot? You didn't know. I just checking to see if you knew what it meant. But she's like, I wish I'd actually kept that letter, because I think there was so much of it. The fact that she says that makes me think like she kind of got so caught up in that word. She's like, what's that mean? I don't know what that means. Is that a bad word? Is he calling me the B word or something like that? Is that a fancy way of saying, like, I'm curious if that legitimately, and it was something that she got so caught up in, she didn't really, really read the rest of the letter because she got so frustrated. I'm curious, which, like I said, I think that's adorable. And it's like, yeah, but I kind of burned it. And Jesse's like, why would you do that? She's like, I was burning down a church. So it's just, and it's like them being the little hellions that they are. They're kind of like being all cute and adorable and smiling about the whole thing. It's just like, oh, dude, they're so cute together. But then, like, Tulip gets separated, and God, is basically, it's like, oh, go ahead, you want to hit me and stuff like that. She's like, nope, that's the only, I'm good. He's like, you're good? You think you're actually good? I didn't interpret it as like, oh, I'm a good person. Like, I figured Tulip doesn't really label herself like that. But I think she's like, I'm a better person than I used to be. But for her, he's like, oh, you think you're good? The fact of the matter is, that was something he threw in her face in season 3. It's because she's an O'Hare. The O'Hares, all they ever do is screw up. It's kind of like the whole point that he makes. So he's actually going to test that. He's like, all right, you know what I'm going to do? I bet you. I give you 60 seconds. Like, if you can go that entire time without hitting me, then I'll spare your friends. I'll call off the apocalypse and everything. But the fact is, I know you won't do it. And it's like, she's like, what's the catch? He's like, what's the catch? There's no catch because I know exactly that you'll lose this bet. So he sets off the timer. He starts saying stuff to kind of irritate her, kind of little this, thief, murderer, all that stuff that other people have called her, stuff that she kind of is. So it's not that big of a deal. But then he brings up the one sore spot that, he knew would trigger her. Dallas. And it's like, oh yeah, your baby girl in particular, which I don't even know if they knew what gender their baby was. I'm sure that added an extra like layer to that whole thing of like they never even knew what the sex of their baby was, and for him to kind of throw that out there, like knowing that I would have had a little girl, so that's a whole thing. But then it's on top of that, it's like, why did you want to know why I did that? Don't you want to know after all this time you finally have a chance, why did I do that? He's like, I don't even remember. That ticked her off, pulls out a gun, bam, 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 and it's like, nope, so close. And he's like, yep, I figured as much. I win, which I say, that's technically, I still say she technically won. Because all you did was say, all she had to do was technically not hit you. Not unless I missed the wording, but the wording exactly was technically hit him. And it's like, technically she didn't hit you, she shot you. But still, there's a technicality of like, it still can't, you get what I'm saying? But still, I feel like she had some wiggle room in that technicality that she won with that whole situation. Because she didn't hit him, she shot him, but either way, so there's that. There's Jesse, coming across Cassidy, who's been ripped apart. It's like, oh my God, Cassidy, what happened? He's like, I said no to him. It's like, you got to go to Humperdew. I'm like, Cassidy's just like, yeah, I said no to him. I'm like, yeah, Cass. And even Jesse's so proud of him. He's like, no. He's like, but I'm through just surviving. Like I said, because like you live for so long, you don't want to just survive. You want to be able to live. And so for him, it's like, no matter what the cost, like, to be able to go home, because he does miss home and potentially having Tulip too. To have what he's always wanted, to just not be a vampire, to have his family again, to have that life again, to have the woman that he loves, it's it was too much. He said no and no over and over again until he finally said yes. And now God gives him blood. And it's like, because for him, it's also, because even for Cassidy, it's like, I didn't do it for you, God. I did it for Humperdew. It's like, yeah, sure. Say whatever you want to. It's also about like, doing it for yourself. So it's like, don't try to act all noble now. I think that's kind of the whole point. So God drags off Jesse, which at the same time, we also got to talk about the whole like Featherstone and, Hair Star situation. It's like, oh, take the time off. And she's like, well, yeah, we've only got like till, the world's literally going to end soon. It's like, yeah. And he starts feeling on her breast and he's like, you are a handsome woman, Featherstone. And me, I'm a handsome man. I'm like, and you see her kind of smile on her face. It's like, your dreams are finally happening, because she's wanted to be with Hera for a long time, because she's in love with him. And then, like, the moment we cut back to it, it's like she's under the covers and she doesn't look satisfied. She looks kind of like, huh. And I'm like, oh, okay. So it wasn't what you expected it to be. He looks satisfied, but she doesn't. I'm like, huh. I'm like, that's interesting. She's like, I mean, there is enough time for us to kind of go again, kind of, I guess, do things a little differently, I'm assuming. And then all of a sudden she pulls back and her suit's still on. I'm like, okay, what happened? I'm like, and my mind immediately went to strap-on, right? Turns out strap-on, not like I thought, a full-blown arm and fist. You know, I was like, oh, that's interesting. So there's that whole thing, and I was like, oh, okay. But the real important thing there in that regard is finding out that, like, basically it's like, you know, because Hera's like, it's not just gonna be the end of the world. We might, you know, set off the bombs and stuff like that to hit certain people and stuff, because it's like, she's like, you know, once we go to heaven, we won't be able to do stuff like that. And he's like, we're not going to heaven. She's like, what are you talking about? He's like, yeah, the whole world isn't going to get destroyed. We made sure that certain places only get it. It's like, how do you know that? How are you sure that? It's like, no, because I gave those orders to get passed out. Are you sure those orders got passed out? Yeah, I gave them to Hoover too. Shit. And so now he has to immediately correct that. And she's like, well, but wait a minute. The original plan was to basically wipe out all the world, and then we go to heaven and stuff like that. And, like, Hera's like, no, that's never been my plan. Like, the fact is, I mean, to be fair, when you actually think about it, he told Jesse his plan, like, back in season 2. But the fact is, I guess, like, no one else in the Grail, maybe not even God, you'd assume God would know, but maybe not. It seems like no one in the Grail knew his true intentions. Like, he never planned on destroying the entire world, only wiping out select groups that maybe he doesn't like or he thinks the world would be better off without, but then kind of still living here is the whole point. But for her, Featherstone dedicated herself to this whole cause, because it's like, I thought, you know, we'd go to heaven and stuff like that. He's like, you sound like someone in a religious cult right now. Look at yourself. And it zooms out to her with the strap on, and it's like, you going to heaven? Pah! And he humiliates her, because for her, it's like, this is all she's ever wanted. Like, she cares about Hera because she thought, hey, he's a great leader, he's a strong man, plus he believes in what I believe in. It's like, wait, what? You had your own plans this entire time? And the fact is, he never clued her in on those plans, because she's always been a devout follower of the Grail and Hera, and now it's like, those are two different paths. So it's like, she lost what her guiding star to a certain extent, which is, I didn't mean that to be the pun that it was, but hey, let's go with it. But along with all of that, there's the whole situation of, like, her, like, she goes to the room that Tulip's locked in, opens the door, and she has a gun to Tulip's face. Tulip's almost like, of course it'd be you that I'd be running into. So that begs the question, where that's going to go. I think she's going to work with Tulip to stop this, because it's like, we have to stop Hera, but it's like, I don't know. Probably because, like, killing Tulip's the only thing she has going for her right now, because everything else is kind of a lie. I mean, granted, Hera is trying to stop, you know, make it so that certain, you know, Grail people know to, you know, hit certain spots, not to make it like a worldwide destruction thing. But I love that the fax machine that he's trying to, like, fax all this stuff through isn't working. And so he's literally on tech support. He's like, literally, if I don't do this, literally you and your entire family are going to be dead because of this situation. So it's like, we need to fix this immediately. It's like, literally, we're down to the wire. And this is coming up so last minute. I love it. I love how janky this apocalypse is from Hairstar's perspective. So then we finally have, you know, Jesse and God. It's like, you know, he's there talking about the fact that it's like, oh, you want to use Genesis on me, don't you? You want to find out whether it works on me now. And I'm like, that's what I've been warning the entire time. Can it work on him? Because we never had an opportunity to see if it would work on Satan. Because I don't know if Satan necessarily has a soul. But what about God? Does God technically have a soul? Like, could we know it works on angels, but does it work on God himself? Because he is the Almighty, because he is so powerful, will it actually affect him? Because we know it doesn't work on a cowboy because the cowboy doesn't have a soul. So maybe God kind of falls in that same category, or maybe because he's so powerful it won't. But the fact is that he doesn't want that Jesse doesn't use it against him. Either it's one, because Genesis could work on him, but he's goading Jesse because he knows Jesse, because of who Jesse is, he will never do that. Because, you know, Jesse, he's he's a religious boy. He was raised a religious boy. His dad was a preacher. So for him, it's like, it's like he's always believed in God. He hasn't always agreed with everything, but he's always felt like that there was a plan, that, that there has to be more than God just being, in this case, just a straight up asshole, So, but God is, goading him, but Jesse can't bring himself to do it. Even when God's like, go ahead and use Genesis against me, but he can't. Because for him, it's like what he wants. I was like, is that what this has really all been about? You want Genesis back, because it's like Genesis is an abomination to both heaven and hell. And it's like, oh, it's something that's power that rivals yours. That's why you don't want it in existence. It's like, yeah, maybe it power rivals mine. Let's see. But Jesse couldn't bring himself to use it. So he's like, give it to me. It's like, all right, if you want it so badly, why don't you take it? And it's like, give it to me. It's like, almighty and powerful as he is, he can't take Genesis from Jesse. It has to be given. To be fair, like, there's been roundabout ways people try to take Genesis from him. Like, there was the whole song and putting him in the canon and everything that Fior and DeBlanc tried at the beginning of the series. That didn't work because it went right back to him. Obviously, you put it in a wrong vessel, it snaps back to Jesse anyway. But so it's like, whatever it is, like, it is so powerful that God can't just reach in and take him out. And then lo and behold, the cowboy shows up. So I'm like, oh, okay. So this is what Jesse was planning the entire time. And it's like, oh yeah, the cowboy's here. And it's like, oh, but God is like, oh yeah, me and William go way back, don't we? And it seems William had an opportunity to put him down, but couldn't. Because the thought of like, hey, don't forget, your wife and child are in heaven. And the fact of the matter is, I'm still your best bet to get to them. So it's like, even though he's so pissed at him, he can't bring himself to kill God. So it's like, okay, he's not here for me, preacher. He's here for you. So now Jesse has to deal with the cowboy. And it's because the cowboy, it's like, it's that thing that kind of Fior and DeBlanc kind of used to trail him along. Oh, we'll get you your family. But it's like, he was lied and manipulated before into thinking that this was going to get him to his family. Because even Sydney had talked about the fact, well, no, because it was Satan that said the whole crows thing was God's idea. Like the whole, so it's like, but still, I think it's also the thing of like, their souls are literally in my hand. Like, I'm the one that can make it so not only can you be reunited, but I'm probably also the one that can make it so that maybe I wipe away their souls or something like that. So their souls might be in the balance, not just them being reunited, but just them existing in general. So it depends. So quite the cliffhanger to end things off of. Like, dude, next episode is in fact the series finale. Where this goes, I have no idea. Win or lose, I don't know. I legitimately don't know, because once again, also because I've never read the comic book that this is based on. But on top of all of that, obviously the show is different from the comic book in many different regards. And like I talked about this before, I know the apocalypse going down in this show is going to be quite different from the one in the comic book. So either way, it's going to be crazy to see how this all wraps up in the series finale. I'm so excited to see what happens. Like I said, I still think Eugene might be the key to all this. Maybe a combination of Eugene, Genesis. There's so many moving parts at this moment. Humperdoo. Is it going to be Hitler that puts him down? Is it going to be Jesse? Is it going to be Tulip? Because Jesse was like, oh, we have to take down Humperdoo. But it's like, he couldn't do it back in season 3. And Tulip couldn't when she had the opportunity. Will Cassidy make the choice? Will it be Humperdoo that ends up actually being the one that saves the day? Will it be Jesus? There's, like I said, there's so many moving parts. I'm so excited to see how this all ends. But really, that's all I want to talk about today. So when we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.